What if ancient people like the Egyptians, the Mayans, or the Chinese were talking across the seas, sharing ideas and technologies long ago? The pyramids of Egypt and the temples of Mesoamerica look a lot alike. Is this just a coincidence, or is there more to know?
Interesting thought, Michelle. It's not only about the pyramids. Some plants from one continent were found across oceans before the colonial era. For example, nicotine and coca were found in Egyptian mummies, but they come from the Americas. Some people doubt it because the results were a surprise and more proof is needed.
Don't forget about old navigation skills. Some say ancient sailors, like the Polynesians, could travel far using stars and ocean currents before the compass was invented. Maybe other ancient cultures could do this too, allowing them to communicate more.
Most historians stick to a set timeline for these civilizations' meetings because we lack clear artifacts or records. But think about the ancient Roman coin found in Japan. It might be a trade item, but it's interesting to think it could show a bigger network of contact.
This makes us ask, if history is like a puzzle we make from what we find, how much of the ancient connection story are we missing? Is there a big story of global contact lost over time, waiting to be found? Here's a curious thought. Before we invented the airplane or the steamship, were ancient civilizations already crossing the wide oceans? Could ancient seafarers have shared sacred rituals or scientific calculations across such vast distances?
You're onto something, Michelle. Think about how materials like obsidian are found in archaeological sites far apart. It suggests a trade network for wider exchanges. The challenge? We need more clear proof like DNA analysis or chemical studies to confirm these interactions.
And don't forget the star navigation. Ancient Polynesians traveled thousands of miles using knowledge passed down through generations. This skill might mean geographic barriers weren't as big as we think. Could other cultures have secret navigation methods to cross the oceans too?
True, but making contact isn't the same as keeping it. Roman artifacts found in India show contact, but not ongoing exchange. What if these meetings were rare, happening only through a few brave merchants or explorers?
This raises an important leap in our thinking. What if the stories of isolated development are our own modern limitations? Maybe the secret lies in looking for smaller links that connect grander stories, possibly challenging what we accept as historically plausible. Think about this. The old DNA from chickens in ancient Polynesia is similar to those in old Chile. Is this just a coincidence, or is it proof of contact across the ocean that changes our timeline?
That's interesting, Michelle. Studies show Polynesians might have reached the Americas before Europeans. The chicken DNA is strange proof. But like with all interesting finds, people argue about what these genes mean and if they show short or long-lasting contact.
We have language evidence, too. Some words in Polynesian and South American languages are very similar. People debate if this is because of old journeys or just chance, but it suggests that Polynesian stories of travel might show a bigger history of exploring.
It surely makes you think about how big these meetings were, Ryan. Did these short contacts lead to sharing knowledge and culture, or were they lost in time, hidden by later civilizations' records?
That's what makes it so interesting, Sonia. If parts of ancient connections were short and not recorded, what more might we be missing in history? Are we seeing history with gaps filled in later? Here's a new idea. What if ancient sailors understood ocean currents like we do today? Could this have helped them cross oceans and add to the world's technology, now forgotten?
It's an interesting idea, Michelle. Studies show some old sea routes were very good, but to show they were planned and not by accident, we need more than guesses about old boat paths. Archaeologists are looking for real proof like old shipwrecks in unexpected ocean places.
There's also the topic of navigation tools. The Antikythera mechanism, a complex Greek device, shows they knew a lot about the stars and time. If Greeks made this, maybe others had different tools we haven't found. We need to think about these possibilities in our view of the past.
Technology is very important, but because we find some things and not others, we might be missing important links. What else could be hidden in history's layers?
It makes you wonder, is our view of old history limited by what we find by chance, while the full story is still buried in time. Think about this. Old ships without today's tech, traveling big oceans. Could these sailors have shared not only goods, but big ideas? Is it possible that our important inventions come from forgotten trades?
Interesting idea, Michelle. Research like the similar construction of big ancient buildings suggests cultural exchanges. While we don't have clear proof, DNA studies from old populations might give us more clues.
Remember when we thought early exploring was mostly done by men? New findings often show ignored views. For example, ancient Scandinavian stories mention women on these trips. What if they're key to the navigation we overlook?
That's a good point, Ryan. Maybe these cultural interactions didn't last due to social or environmental issues. Could short meetings have shaped our world more quietly than long contacts?
It's fun to think about. Did these brief meetings start big developments in building or science in different places? Or are we just forcing random bits into a big picture that never was there? What if the Indus Valley seals with strange symbols were used for trade records with places like Mesopotamia? Could these symbols be pieces of an old worldwide communication we can't read yet?
That's an interesting idea, Michelle. Some seals in Mesopotamia have similar marks. Historians hesitate to say there was direct trade without more proof, but studying language patterns might reveal these old talks.
Language studies often surprise us too. Some experts think shared word roots between far languages show old communication. But do these language similarities prove contact, or are they just chance looks alike?
Exactly, Ryan. Language evidence is one of our most unsure ways to say there was old contact. Still, it's exciting to think about how links like that might change our ideas of how information spread between cultures.
So are we about to find a story that changes history? Or are we just playing with coincidences that our minds make bigger? Here's a question. The Olmecs had big heads, and the Easter Islanders had their giant statues, each with special features. Both made these huge sculptures very carefully. Could they have shared ways to make them, or got ideas from each other across the Pacific?
That's a puzzling idea, Michelle. There's a theory that long-distance contact might explain these similarities. Some studies say they use the same shapes in ancient art, but we don't have proof that these groups were connected.
Maybe it's more than sculpture they shared. Farming techniques like terracing show up in places like the Andes and Southeast Asia. Did these ideas spread over oceans, or did they happen separately? Science is still trying to figure this out.
Good point, Ryan. We know cultural exchanges don't always leave clear signs. Studies on old ships found possible links between faraway groups, but we know less about how they shared ideas. How much more cultural exchange is hidden in missing records?
And that's the question, isn't it? If these old connections were real, they could change how we think about the start and spread of human creativity. Are we about to change history, or are we just making guesses from these interesting coincidences?